Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with one of our fellow Yeti brethren, Alex Breen. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for stepping out the cave and keeping it geekly with us, man.
Thank you so much, Cody, for having me.
You know, I love that segue too. I kind of just like built it up on the fly, and I'm like, dude, that just fits so perfectly. We're here to break down a martial arts revenge story from within. But before we get to the high kicks and karate chops, let's start out with who you are and how you got into creating comics.
Sure thing. So, like, comics wasn't like my first love. I grew up as like a film geek. Like, my first job was at Blockbuster, so like that instantly dates me. But like when my freshman year in college, I just fell head over heels in love with comics, and like I remember like I just digested like an Iron Fist omnibus in like one setting, the Brubaker Fraction stuff, and like it just dawned on me. It was like, man, I want to make comics. So like I spent about like 5 or 6 years of basically my entire college time just like experimenting, reading everything I could get my hands on, and I made some like garage type of comics that I probably wouldn't show anyone ever again, but I made them, and you know, we all have to start somewhere. But you know, from there for about a few years started chipping away at From Within, and I've also made a few short stories in between, like the pandemic, one of which got picked up by Nightmare Theater, if you're familiar with that anthology.
Was that Kill Your Darlings?
Yep, that's the one. So
I just love how Iron Fist was your break into it, and From Within, man, it almost seems like it's kind of like your little nod to falling in love with comics.
In a way, yeah. You know, I think probably my first inspiration of it was oddly Mortal Kombat. I think I loved the lore of Mortal Kombat so much from those early games, and I think that was a basis point. And then I definitely had a Bruce Lee kick, like I'm sure most people did. Not just Enter the Dragon, but like just some of his other flicks. It's just kind of cool, like those scenes where he just goes into a room and just wrecks everybody. But
oh man, those movies are so awesome. Like which one? I love Fearless. Have you seen Fearless, where the main protagonist, he gets like poisoned? It's like a tournament. It's awesome. He gets poisoned, so he's like fighting at the end. He's like trying not to die. Dude, I love it.
I think that one's Jet Li, but I've heard of that one. I haven't seen that one. But I think it was Fists of Fury was the one I'm thinking of. Is like he goes into this room, and it's just the coolest thing in the world. Like there's no way one dude can take out like 30 people, but Bruce Lee for some reason just makes it feel believable. Like that dude was just like mythic.
So with some of those short stories, before we get into From Within, let's break down some of those other stories too, like Kill Your Darlings. What is that story about?
So it's like a really personal story. Like it's about writing, but not in a way that like I usually hate stories that are about writing. But I've had this thought one day where, and I'm not sure if you've had this feeling, Cody, or maybe other artistic people have had this feeling, but sometimes the pursuit of a creative passion comes with a lot of consequences, not in ways you could have predicted at the beginning. So like, I know for a fact that some of my pursuit of writing and other things led to some of my relationships getting altered, not in ways I could have predicted. Not to be like super dramatic, but like, you know, I could just see that decision led to some consequences. And that thought is what birthed Kill Your Darlings. And I just so happened to get an incredible creative team on that book. It was just this like quick 8-page horror comic in and out. Had Anna Weischick. I think I'm saying the name right. I'm always apologizing to Anna, but like her work is incredible. If you've read the Image series Home, she did the artwork for that last year.
No, that is awesome. And I was just talking about this earlier. I had someone hit me up, and they wanted to know if like they offended me in any way or anything. And I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry. Like, I kind of just got into doing interviews, and like I didn't realize, like, once you get like stuck in that hyper focus, like it's hard to see how the ripple effect, like how it affects everyone else in your circle.
Yeah, it's especially for, I'm sure it's this way with like art, but especially with writing, you have to spend a lot of time alone to really get your thoughts together for a story. I'm sure there's some people, like I think the most I can do is I can be that Starbucks writer I hate Starbucks. But like I can go to a coffee shop very easily and write stuff. And I know that's a cliche, but like I actually can do it. So I can be around people to a degree, but like if someone's like trying to text me or something when I'm in that mood, it's like I've got to leave it on red. It's like, I'm sorry, nothing personal. It's just I've got to do this thing. But you know, it's like that is, you know, whether it's intentional or not, you know, that does change some of your relationships. Doesn't necessarily have to be super self-destructive. I kind of took that feeling and went to the nth degree of it. Like, what was the worst version of this of me, and put that onto the page. But you know, that felt very cathartic, seeing that story play out the way it did.
Yeah, I was about to ask, like, how were you able to take that feeling and turn it into a horror story?
Just imagining the worst version of myself and ramping it up helps a lot. You know, I think there are a lot of writers who inherently just hate everything they do, and I'm not that. Like, everything, it's a struggle sometimes. Like, I'm not saying everything requires work to, you know, get things just right, but I'm a lot more comfortable with, this is my first draft. I know it's not going to be everything that I want it to be out as a first draft, because it's the first draft. So I'm permitting myself to just be the bluntest version of what I want to get across on a page, and then I just know, okay, in other drafts I will refine it. But you know, it's like I've grown accustomed to that practice, and then literally just seeing like artwork come to life is like the greatest feeling in the world. Like when you get that script and you're just like, it feels like a kid at Christmas opening up a gift and seeing what that artwork looks like. It's nothing beats that feeling, honestly.
Man, I gotta say, it's impressive, because your mentality, like, a lot of people have trouble like getting into that mindset, like, hey, this is my first draft, it's not going to be perfect. You know, what kind of led to you breaking that mold and like getting into this mindset?
A lot of me trying and failing. Like, yeah, at a certain point, you have to just permit yourself to fuck up, just to be the bluntest version of that. Like, I think one of the first times I really heard it described was by Matt Fraction, and it eventually clicked with me. But have you ever listened to some Matt Fraction interviews, Cody?
Maybe. I listen to a lot of stuff as background noise with, and you know, I never kind of like get the names, but give us a little bit about it.
So this is like an older interview from Word Balloon, and he's probably said it in other places too. But he was watching Ed Wood, which was a Tim Burton movie with Johnny Depp. And it's famously about this, and I'm sure this is just great material regurgitating a better interview, but you should definitely track it down. So, you know, Ed Wood is this like famously awful filmmaker. Like, he made Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is like one of the worst like bad movies of all time that people love watching for that reason. And, you know, there's a scene where he's trying to talk to like a studio head or a financier or something like that. And, you know, he is like putting on this whole pitch, and he's like, I'm the director of Glenda Glenda, and the studio head just like looks at him as like, that's like the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen in my life. And then without missing a beat, like Ed Wood just like turns around and goes, well, my next one will be better, and then he goes straight into pitching the next movie. And you know, Fraction's insight on that scene is like, oh, it's okay to fuck up, the next one will be better. And you know, over time, like, that helped. And then I don't know, dude, like for writing or anything creative, I think it's okay to just allow yourself to have some fun, accept that you will always be improving. You're never going to have that masterwork inherently. Even I'm just going to use Alan Moore. I know there's a lot of conversation around him recently, but like, I'm sure if, you know, you asked Alan Moore what his best work is, it's probably not even the thing that everyone thinks is his best work. He probably hates the thing that everyone, I know in some cases he definitely does. But like, just for example purposes, like, you know, he might think that Watchmen is a failure on a technical level rather than like what it led to, so to speak.
And speaking of doing better the next time and fucking up, I cannot tell you how many times I've butchered someone's last name in these interviews. Matt Lesniewski. I spent 15 minutes before our interview on Google pronunciation, just listening to it, talking it over, practicing it. Talk to him. I'm like, hey, dude, how do you pronounce your last name? And he said it. I was like, perfect, I can do that. And then we went live, and I froze. I was like, oh my God. And that was interview like 205. So, I mean, doing better and better is like, that's all you can do. But speaking of interviews, you yourself, you're a pretty big interviewer, in my opinion, at least. We were talking earlier backstage. I said I consider you pretty prolific. Man, you're knocking them out left and right, and you're doing them in person. Like, that is, whew, I give you kudos.
Well, thank you so much. I did not think I was prolific in any way, but I will take the compliment. Thank you so much. It fell into, I think I've told people this on the side before, but like, to be completely honest, I just fell into this as a complete accident. That was not at all like the plan for Heroes Con. But what ended up happening was I go every year anyway. It's usually something I go to with a couple of friends. And like I go on a road trip with them because I usually stop in like Ohio because I'm from Ohio originally.
Hey, Ohio love, baby.
Yeah, hell yeah. So for that trip, I was going to go with a specific friend. They were having a kind of a rough year. I won't go into too many details, but long story short, very last minute, has a health issue, wasn't going to be able to make it. I already had the hotel kind of booked, and it was, at the time I had some rough transportation issues at the time, so I had to kind of, it wasn't meant to be like Heroes wasn't meant to be me being there all weekend. Like I was just going to be there Friday and then have a vacation, actually. But then if I was going to be there for the full weekend, I'm like, I don't want to be spending a metric ton of money, which I could easily do. So I decided, okay, I'm going to try. And this is like maybe 7-8 days before the show. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and do some interviews at this show. So I open it up, Yeti, Signal boosts me, and I get just blitzed with all these people who want to do interviews, most of which I have no reference point for. Like 90% of the interviews that I've done at Heroes, I really did not know much of people's work on the fly. So almost all those interviews, like I got a couple PDFs, and this is like on Monday or Tuesday, and I'm leaving on like Wednesday, and I'm reading these things like mad. I'm jotting down questions like crazy. And then even on Thursday when I'm like going to the show, I realized there was a chance for me to take a really big swing for like the one person I did know, and they agreed to it. So I was like, oh shit, okay. And I ended up like late at night on Thursday just jotting down questions like crazy to prep for that one too, that I had no prior plans to. So a lot of that was me figuring out on the fly.
You're like, I'm swinging for this. Oh crap, they actually took it.
Yeah, that was definitely my reaction as I'm like driving to the hotel, like very close. I'm like, okay, I guess I got to figure out what I want to say now.
So is that in Ohio?
Heroes? No, that one's in Charlotte. So
okay, I was gonna say, because
North Carolina.
I've been trying to figure out cons, and I'm from Ohio, so that's, when you said Ohio, I was like, hey dude, like, and that's my biggest thing is like finding out where like a list of cons are. You can't, like, I've been like trying to look left and right for them.
I think there's probably ones for like anime con sites, but yeah, not like American cons. It's weird.
So, man, like we were talking backstage, like that's a whole different beast. Like going to people live, prepping questions on the fly like that, man. Was that like kind of your first time doing it, or have you done it before?
I guess you could say that I'd been doing it for years, in the sense of I had a couple of years of going up to creators I respected when I was like in college and doing the Doctor Strange teach me kind of thing. Like I definitely went up to a couple creators and picked their brains for like 15 minutes here and there. I think the biggest version of that was like a couple of years ago. I was able to pick Azarella's brain for like 40 minutes.
Ooh,
which was pretty awesome. Cool. Like, yeah, so
is it hard not to like geek out and fanboy with them?
Progressively I've gotten better about it. It's definitely easier, like the Heroes interviews, and every interview when I don't exactly know what someone's work is. Like I want to make sure that I give them good questions regardless of if I know their work or not. But it's definitely a lot easier for me to go in and have a conversation. Well, like for the Sebastian Gardner interview, which that was my big swing one, that showed up on the site, and I'll plug that one gladly because I'm still so proud of how that interview went. But that was definitely one where it's like, okay, I love the hell out of Devil's Red Bride, unapologetically love that book, and I wanted to since I did give a shit in that way, in the positive way, I'm like, I want to come up with a really cool interview for that. So I felt the pressure in that sense that I really didn't for just about anyone else. Wes Craig was kind of a similar one. I'm working on a transcribed interview for him from C2E2 that should hopefully be coming out soonish. My schedule kind of blew up, otherwise it'd been out. So apologies in advance to Yeti about that. I wanted to get that one out sooner.
Well, that's another thing though too. I mean, I do live shows and stuff, but you like transcribe these as well, which is a whole another layer. Like I give so much respect and kudos to that, because like just the fact that you're bridging that gap for the accessibility factor is awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't like making things easy for myself, and I think that's probably a pattern. I joke, but like sometimes I really do things a little more extra than I probably should. Like the first couple I did through an AI learning transcriber, and then I like tweaked it as I went. And that was fine for the first couple because they were relatively short. By the time I got to the Gardner one, I'm like, I'm gonna, metaphorically speaking, I'm not being literal, but it's like I will die if I try doing that for that one. So I then switched to a paid transcriber for that one. Then I was like, okay, I can tweak it from here, and it'll look better that way. And it's just, that's what I'm doing going forward. So I just gotta remember when I have long interviews, because I like being conversational, and I like even in written interviews to have a flow. I don't want to feel robotic of like, here's your 10 questions. Like I do that too. Yeah. Like I've done that like for when it's just emails. I'm like, here's my 10. I might have a follow-up here, but that's that. And it's like nice, quick, to the point. When I'm at the cons, I want to be more conversational, have it flow and feel like it has a rhythm to it, even if it's not spoken.
The cadence is like so important, and like having that be read in like text form is hard. I know doing written interviews, I started kind of getting into that with Comic Book Yeti, and I really like, it's kind of reversed for me. Like I try to have like the cadence like as good as possible with my written stuff, because I do live so much. I really want my text ones to kind of like just be like my swing all, like give my 110%. So yeah, no, I love that, dude. I think that's really awesome.
So which is your favorite interview you've done on Yeti? I'm curious.
Oh man.
I'm not trying to put you too much on the spot, but I'm just kind of curious.
So let me see. I gotta think of all the ones I've done so far. There was a point where I was having one knocked out every other day, it felt like. So I just got done doing a really big one. Edmund Truman, he did Postcards from Congo. So my last two, like these books have been like 100, 200 pages. Like the San Diego Comic-Con one I did was a big one. That was literally like 400 pages. I was like, man, and I read every single page. Now this Postcard from Congo one, it's like a graphic, it's like a visual novel. And it's like the first time like the history of Congo has been like put in a book. And he's never been there. But when he wrote it, but it's based of all like firsthand experiences from people there, and it's like was such an indescribable like experience reading that, seeing like the trauma and the suffering they went through, and seeing like he kept true to the art style and everything. And I have yet to see that come back, but like just the questions that I scripted and just like how deep I got in that one, I love it. You know what I mean? I always try to do better with the next one. I think it's funny how the earlier ties into this. Like, yeah, man. What about you though? You've done quite a few yourself.
Okay, so I'm gonna take the con ones out of the way because that's a different beast altogether. But I think one of my earliest ones, which was such a challenge, I think it's the Matsuda brothers. It was a writer and an artist team, and I apologize if I got the names wrong in advance, but it was a writer and an artist bit, and my skill set's more geared towards writers. Like I'm really good at coming up with questions geared towards writers. But I intentionally took on that interview because I wanted to. I didn't want it to feel like, in that sense, that I was gearing every question towards the writer and then giving the artist a token question to make it feel like they were a part of the conversation. Like I actively made it as much as possible where both could be involved, and occasionally I give them a specific question here or there. That one was probably the most in-depth I went. In that one, I also probably made it a little bit more complicated than I needed to, but I liked, and that also led to other ones where like I interviewed an entire creative team like once or twice for a couple books, and like those ones I might not do in that format again because it banks on everyone sending questions, and like it's just very easy for those to get tripped up. No offense to anybody there. It's oof.
It seems like it would be so hard to keep like a good like organic flow, you know, like you'd have to like stop and make sure you're addressing the whole entire team like every other question, it feels like.
Yeah, it's generally my rule of thumb for those where like, look, if I'm not specifically saying someone's name, anyone can answer these questions. And then I will make it very clear when it's like, I'm directing towards you. Boom, give me an answer to this.
So I started yesterday was like my second indie game interview, and I don't know a lot of the terminology. Like I could talk comics all day long, but like when I get into that, I'm like, okay, so what program do you do to do this? Like, like I'm using these first interviews to kind of learn my terminology for the next one, and man, it's hard stretching that comfort zone and pushing yourself to meet new limits. But speaking of meeting new limits, let's get back on task. Let's talk a little bit about what we're here for, and that's From Within. This is such an awesome martial arts story focusing on revenge as well. I had the opportunity to read this. Thank you so much for that PDF, and it was such a blast, man. Give us a little bit about what this is about.
Sure thing. So, yep, it's a martial arts revenge story. It's about this young man who's been enslaved since birth for his parents attempting to overthrow an evil emperor. The evil emperor did not take too kindly to that because obviously he's evil and made the kid's life a living hell. He wants nothing more than revenge. Like that's basically just his only reason for sticking around, is just pure spite. And he gets this chance through this martial arts tournament where the winner of which can face the emperor for anything they desire. But of course, all he wants is revenge for basically having his life be taken from him.
And I just love the seeds that you planted early on in this, and just kind of watching the protagonist, grow, if you will. And I really think the first name is a nice little nod. I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but if you do, was the meaning behind the name, like what was that? Did you mean to do that?
So, this is where this gets very funny in the case of From Within, to be completely transparent with everybody. Like, I have been writing this story on and off since 2016. So like some of the initial origins of this book and names get a little fuzzy for me. But as far as that, it may have had an intent, but I do not remember the specific reason why I picked his name.
I want to say when I was looking up how to pronounce it, because I looked that up too, just in case we were going to talk about it. Someone said it was like a meaning like rising. It's like inner strength or rising above or something. I was like, dude, this was like such a perfect name. Yeah,
and it's like that could have very easily been the reason I came up with it back then, but that part's straight up fuzzy. I have one very specific, I have a couple very specific memories of when that story took shape, and you may have a question about this later, but I did something pretty crazy around the time that I made this book, or at least I started writing the book at the time. But we can get there in a second. I'll let you continue.
Yeah, I mean, no, we can take off right there. I was just kind of talking about the name a little bit, because when I was reading it and doing the pronunciation check, I was like, dude, this name ties into the story like perfect. This is intertwined like perfectly.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I guess regarding some more of the book's origins, around the time I graduated college, I was riddled with debt, trying to, be able to pay student loans. Like I'm sure most people are in that spot. Probably worse off now than even when I graduated. So, I just worked for a year. I didn't do any writing. And one day I kind of realized that, I was kind of miserable. Or actually, no, not kind of. I was straight up miserable. And I couldn't piece together why. And I realized that, I haven't written in a year. And I had this feeling at the time that I didn't want to call myself a writer if I wasn't actively working on writing. And this is not me, once again, trying to be judgmental towards anyone, but I'm just purely talking about myself. I didn't want to call myself a writer, and then it's like, what are you working on? And it's like I had nothing for them. So I had this feeling that if I didn't start something soon, that eventually maybe life would make a decision for me and maybe I'd move on to something else. So I just kind of asked myself, is this what I actually want to do? And when I answered yes, it's like, okay, let's just go for it. So I came up with the bones of the story. I had the outline of everywhere I wanted to go with it. I hadn't written anything. And I did a call out for artists, and I caught the artist Renzo Podesta, my good buddy now. Like, that dude, we've been through a lot together making this comic. So, when it came time I signed a contract, and it's like, okay, this is like Thursday when I signed this contract.
Mm-hmm.
And, I told him I will have a 22-page script for you by Monday. And this is Thursday night, and I haven't written shit. I haven't written anything. So that Saturday morning, I wake up, and I'm not kidding, I did not leave my desk. I wrote the entire thing in one sitting, and it's probably one of the greatest feelings of my life. It was like, I don't believe in writer's block anymore, straight out. I'll just tell you that. But like, that's one of the first times where that really became clear to me, is like, I had no time to think double, or I guess overthink things. Like, oh, is this like, should be a 5-panel page, 4-panel page, 6-panel page? Oh, is that line? None of that shit. I did it, got it done. And when I finished it and sent it off to him, that was like one of the greatest feelings of my life. I had to just keep doing it.
Yeah, I work best under pressure too. Like for me, if I have a whole day where there's nothing happening, I will wait until the very last second to get it done. But if I'm working and I have only just until 4, I'm like, okay, well, I only have like 2 hours to get this done. I need to get it done now. So I get in the habit of actually setting timers on my phone, like 15-minute timers, so it just triggers that anxiety feeling that I need to get this done because I don't have time.
Interesting. So the other part I'll compound onto this, just so you understand. This is an over 200-page story in its entirety. This is the first 44-page chunk of that. So it's, as long as everything goes well, it's a 2-volume story.
Let's go.
So I had to perpetually keep doing that script writing. Yeah. Now, over time, I got better with it, and I didn't have to be so last minute. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I needed that push. And I was crazy enough to just jump into it.
Let's go ahead, I think, right now, and would be the perfect time to jump into the pre-order page for Dauntless. Everyone who is watching or listening, here is the pre-order link for dauntlessstories.com to check this out with us. If you are not able to pre-order, just simply sharing this on Twitter, sharing it on Facebook, anywhere that you can share links will help a ton. It'll get so many different eyes on this, and you're gonna have someone on your friend list who's gonna love this story. And then when is this set to the physical set to drop?
So the physical, once the campaign wraps, it's going to go straight to the printer. The art is all done for this chunk, so it'll be a lightning fast fulfillment.
And then we already went over the story, but here are some of the preview pages, because you guys only got to see the cover during our talk. So here are some of those interiors, and they are so gorgeous. I just love the coloring and just like the texturing and the different aspects of it. I love how like right here, like it's silhouetted. There's a lot of like silhouettes feeling, you know what I mean? Where you're not necessarily getting as detailed as possible. You're letting it kind of just like speak for itself.
Yeah, it's Brian Valenza I had at the time. He just did spectacular job on colors. There's when you get to some of the action pages, the way that the colors just explode when someone gets punched or kicked. Mm-hmm. Like that's just one of those things that instantly grabbed me anytime I saw him do that on a page. And also just once again, huge shout out to DC Hopkins, my letterer. I absolutely adored working with him on this series, and he just brings so much personality to the balloons. And even just like that page 1 where it had the caption of like the location, like kind of felt like painting at the top. Like I absolutely adore that touch.
And I also like right here too, where the father's talking to the emperor, like giving my son back with the red circle around it just to give it that emphasis.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
And I love this too, leading up to the protagonist story. We see his parents, how they're getting mishandled. And this emperor, you do a good job of like just building the resentment, towards him like early on.
Yeah, he's a real piece of work. As the story goes along, you kind of get to see that he has quite a bit of hang-ups that impact not just the lead character, but also the other character that gets introduced into this story. I'll just say that as the story progresses, it kind of becomes two protagonists in this series.
We see right here there was some sort of transgression. So him, the father and mother are getting killed, but the son is not going to be that fortunate. And I love right here, he's going to be when he's of age, he's going to be forced into labor camp. So it's like this emperor just goes above and beyond being diabolical. Like, this guy is scum.
Yeah, he's the kind of person where if you like wrong him in any way, even the slightest transgression, he will just he's 100% scorched earth on any and everything. Guy has no chill. But
yeah, man, I love these interiors. This art is so gorgeous.
Yeah, I love Renza to death. For like we worked together on this story with the artwork for probably about 3.5 to 4 years, just kind of slowly putting it all together.
Here's some of those action sequences as well, and I love right here too when he's doing the palm, like how it's just a subtle like change of colors.
Yep, that's exactly. It just feels like an explosion in comparison to the blues.
And then right here too. Was there any intention for that? Like going from like the blue to orange?
Oh, I feel like that was 100% Brian's intention. Yeah. If he was on here, he probably could give you more on it. But like that was when I had a couple of different colorists send me like samples just to kind of see if I wanted them on the project. Like that, and actually scroll up a little bit. Okay. Stop right there. So there is a bit. Technically, it's a small little bit, but I'll just say one of the things that won Brian the job when we were talking, he did a slight continuity correction on that middle panel on the left.
Oh, really?
If I had the original drawing, there was a little bit with the bandages that was a little off, and he kind of fixed it. It's ever so slightly, but it was like that little attention to detail where I'm like, yeah, I need this guy on my team. Because
it's one thing to have someone who can color for you, but to have someone who is like actively working and making small corrections like that, like that's priceless, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of collaboration, man. Like as the story goes, I keep on giving my collaborators more room to add their own flourishes. Like I have a very low ego when it comes to my storytelling, dude. I do a pretty clean cut script, and then from there it's like, hey man, whatever additions you want to make, I'll then kind of tweak my script around that to make sure that the story benefits. I don't need my words to necessarily be the entire focal point. It's a martial arts comic. At the end of the day, we need people to get punched and kicked, and I can't do that 100% with just my words.
Hey, and a good team, with a good team, the art can tell the story as well, right? Like there could be a good balance of both. So here are some of the rewards for this outstanding book. Go ahead and give us the juice. We have some interesting news for the digital tier. So this is at $7, and I'll let you take the wheel from here.
Yeah, sure thing. So the coolest thing, I had this conversation with Marcus, since we have the benefit of this chunk of the book being already done. We were just talking, and we're going to make it where when you buy the digital version, it's going to get sent to you instantly. So it's going to be an immediate, like if we're talking about lightning fast turnaround with the print version, it's just like, when you buy it, then Marcus is going to turn around and send you a digital copy. You can read it right away. The only thing I would ask is, when you guys do that, just, make sure to let me know what you think. I would love to hear how people are taking in this story. I'm very curious where people think it's going to go from here too.
Yeah,
clearly I have quite a plan for these characters.
So we have the physical tier, and this is just $1 more. So I think that is such an awesome price, man.
Thank you. Yeah, and like I said, I had a lot of conversations with Marcus about price. I want to make sure, especially because, as far as the writing side of things, not a lot of people are familiar with me. So I want to make sure that that's a reasonable ask for people to be able to jump into. And then I really like what he did with the physical and digital tiers. I think that was $12, a pretty fair combined offer right there.
Because you'll get that digital right away. Man, that is awesome. Yeah, I'm loving these tiers. So we have an awesome one right here as well, the print package tier at $18. and this will be with a print by Matt Harding. So is this the print in question?
Yep, that is the print.
That's so awesome, dude.
Yeah, Marcus was telling me about Matt, and I'm all for it. I personally, like, I always had this idea in my head. I'm like, it'd be kind of cool if we had like a fighting game screen, of a couple of the characters. Like, do you play fighting games?
A little bit. I'm more of like an action RPG guy.
Gotcha. I'm not great at fighting games, but I definitely have a soft spot for them, and I love, especially the design of fighting games. Is like
multiverses, maybe. Do you get down on multiverses?
I should play it sometime. I haven't gotten to it yet.
It's good. See, I suck at Super Smash Brothers, but multiverses is kind of like an easier introduction to that type of fighting game.
Okay.
I used to get down on the Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 on the Sega Genesis back in the day, but anything disc related, I just, because I just get, if I start losing, I start button mashing, and then you get punished so hard for button mashing.
Have you ever played Marvel vs. Capcom 2?
Yes, that is a fire one too. I love it, man.
I started getting into that a little bit during the pandemic, and that's one of those games where, like, if you make one mistake, you don't get to play anymore. You're just you get infinite to death. But anyway, like, I love the character select screens of fighting games too, and that was kind of the genesis of this idea. So you kind of get a couple little Easter eggs, like a scorpion in there, for other characters, not just like my main group. So I just thought that was a really fun thing that Matt just turned around and knocked out of the park. I didn't even ask for like the little Easter eggs, but I just love that little touch.
And so with that being said, after going through that and looking at the pre-orders, what would you like to say to anyone who might be on the fence about pre-ordering this? If you had just one opportunity to kind of sway their opinion.
So I would say that this is a investment in a very expansive story. This is something that I know that for this type of story, and for me being relatively new, that can be a little bit of like, oh, does he have it all done? It's like, yeah, I've already scripted it, and the art is pretty much all in the can. So like, as we're going through this, we're going to be even coming up with quicker turnarounds for these stories as we go to hopefully get this out there. And this is a really introspective type of martial arts story. Like, you get really cool action, but the way that some of these characters evolve over such a quick space, it's just, personally, as each of us find our footing more, like DC starts honing in on his style, Renzo just keeps upping his game each issue, and I feel like I keep upping my game as well, or at the very least I'm keeping up with them, I like to say. But it's something I'm so proud of, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what people think of it.
No, and I had the opportunity to read it. I loved it. I do martial arts with my children, and I love kind of seeing the revenge story take root and start to grow. And like I said, you did such an awesome job, like building those seeds of resentment early on for the Emperor. And like, I wish I could go in there and punch the dude in the face. Like, it would be such a great feeling just to knock this guy out just once. Just give me one round with him.
Yeah. When that guy throws hands, it's shit gets real. Like, it's he has a couple of moments where it's like, yeah, he's a problem.
Hey, but sometimes problems got to be squished, and I think with that, let's get to squish into one of my favorite parts of the podcast, and that is where I ask creators for a little bit of advice. So Alex, with this being your first time on the show, I always like asking a question in particular that could help people who might be new, might be struggling, or anything in between. So with that being said, for anyone who might be having a hard time getting started with their script, getting started with their art, or anything with their comic, what advice would you offer them to help them kind of push through that and get motivated just to go?
Well, I mean, to double back to a couple of things we previously talked about, I think first off, have fun with it. Like, genuinely make a story that you need to get out there. And you don't necessarily need to show it to everyone first. You can build up some confidence, make a couple just for yourself, maybe sit on them for a little bit and go back and tweak them. But at a certain point, have fun and just allow yourself to fail. And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, failure is necessary to grow. No one bats 1,000. Your favorite person doesn't even bat 1,000. So that's how we get better.
Favorite person probably batted 100,000 times to bat 1,000, right? Like, it's all those failures that lead to that success. And You know, people get lucky sometimes right out the gate, but you know, I agree with you. You have to build that resilience. You have to build that experience, and that's going to carry you forward.
Yeah, I think you even if you caught fire with your first thing, I think that's almost worse. Like I mean that honestly.
Yeah.
But think of it this way, because like, okay, you caught fire, and then your next thing is like, oh, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
because it's like then you're trying to meet expectations of like what you've already established when you're trying to find yourself. I think that's actually so much worse. You can build yourself up to a point where you can. I hope, and I genuinely hope this, like, make sure you enjoy your work. Like, you can always be driving to get better, but like, we don't want to be that self-destructive. It's like we can be better than that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for not only awesome piece of advice, but an awesome sit down. This was such a great time, Alex. I had a blast reading this PDF and getting, you know, the chance to kind of know you a little bit deeper than just a profile picture on Twitter, man. This was such an awesome time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Cody. I had a blast too.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone who is watching, this has been such an awesome Saturday. Here is the link to pre-order this. Once again, if you're unable to, simply sharing this on Facebook, Twitter, anywhere you can will help get the word out. With that being said, I hope you all have an awesome day, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.